Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. The two Pill Stream Sect disciples' hair flew about wildly, and their robes whipped about. Their faces were ashen, and even their skin seemed to be pressed down from the force. They were terrified to the extreme as the wild wind battered them, turning them into rowboats in a hurricane as the mountain toppling, sea-draining force inundated them, sending them stagger back, blood spraying out of their mouths. The female disciple was trembling violently, blood oozing out her eyes, ears, and nose. As she lurched away from Bai Xiaochun, it quickly became apparent that she couldn't endure the force that was pushing against her. She let out a blood-curdling scream as first her eyes exploded, then her head, and then her entire body. She instantly transformed into a haze of blood that was swept away by the wind. "No!" screamed the male disciple. Blood began to pour out of his mouth, and he was shaking violently. His world began to turn black, and he let out an agonized shriek. Never in his darkest nightmares could he have imagined that he would provoke someone as indescribably heaven-defying as this. The energy and pressure felt like something from an elder in his sect. It was something that a chi condensation disciple should never have to endure, something that not even the most powerful chosen he knew, Fang Lin, could stand up to. It was wrong. The information the sect gave us was totally wrong. Don't kill me. The blood-soaked male disciple was breaking down mentally, and began to plead and weep. He didn't want to die, and could hardly bear the terror he felt. However, before he could finish speaking, Bai Xiaochun stepped forward and grabbed him by the throat. "My sect nephew Joe didn't want to die," he growled. "And you know what? I didn't want to kill anyone, either." Bai Xiaochun was not the type of person to be friends with just anybody. His heart belonged to the Spirit Stream Sect. It didn't matter how that had come to be, to him, the Spirit Stream Sect was home. He tightened his grip, and a cracking sound could be heard as the Pill Stream Sect disciple's neck was crushed. His eyes bulged, and his legs twitched a few times. Then he was dead. Things gradually went quiet. Bai Xiaochun released his grip and then walked back to Zhou Yudao's corpse. He sighed. "Zhou Yudao," he said softly, "allow me to bring you back to the sect." With that, he put Zhou Yudao's corpse into his bag of holding, taking his Dao bottle but leaving his bag of holding untouched. As for the people from the Pill Stream Sect, he searched them thoroughly. Before leaving, he put the contents of the 4 Dao bottles he had collected into his own. Altogether, they hadn't even collected half as much as he had on his own. At long last, he had a chance to see what the Pill Stream Sect disciples' jade slips said about him. Bai Xiaochun from the Spirit Stream Sect. A genius in the Tao of medicine, suspected to be the so-called little turtle of the sect. Unknown techniques, unclear battle prowess. Sometimes weak, sometimes strong, has a large collection of magical objects. Took first place in the sect's chosen battles, likely due to negligence on the part of Ghostfang. If you encounter him, worry about his Tao of medicine, not his battle prowess. Attack him 2-1. Bai Xiaochun wasn't sure where the Pill Stream Sect got their information, but now he was even more curious about what the information from the Profound Stream Sect and the Blood Stream Sect said. With that, he left. 4 hours later, an expressionless young man approached the scene. It was none other than Fang Lin from the Pill Stream Sect. Eyes glittering, he looked around the area to determine what had occurred. Before long, he was standing in the spot where Bai Xiaochun had let out that powerful roar. He closed his eyes as if he were seeking enlightenment. Soon, his expression flickered, and his eyes snapped open. So strong. Who did this? Song Ke? Ghostfang? 9 Isles? Fang Lin took a deep breath as the desire to fight rose up in his heart. Looking around, he identified the path Bai Xiaochun had taken when he left, and then picked a different direction, unwilling to make contact at the moment. 4 hours later, another person appeared. He was a tall, burly man surrounded by flame lightning. After looking around, his eyes began to shine, and he started panting. It wasn't Song Ke, nor was it 9 Isles. Could it have been Ghostfang? Damn it, I don't want to provoke any one of those 3. This man was none other than Lei Shan. After looking around, he hesitated, unable to determine exactly which direction the terrifying figure responsible for the scene had taken. Gritting his teeth, he randomly picked a direction, which just so happened to be the same direction Bai Xiaochun had taken. Time sped by. Over the following 3 days, quite a few people passed by the area. Some picked up on the clues, others didn't. On evening of the third day, Song Ke approached. Although the traces of the battle were mostly gone by that time, he could sense that there was something odd about the area. Squatting down, he put his right hand onto the surface of the ground. A moment later, his eyes shone brightly. Such energy. This was neither Nine Isles nor Fang Lin. Not Ghost Fong either. In that case, it must have been Bai Xiaochun. Narrowing his eyes, he turned and sped off into the distance. Around that same time, Bai Xiaochun was also speeding along through the world of the sword. Whenever he encountered an earth string bane beast, he would kill it and collect its earth string energy. More gray liquid was building up in his Dao bottle, but he was still quite a ways away from being able to form the earth string capture crystal. In the current area, the bane beasts provided a lot more earth string energy than those from further back, but unfortunately, they were harder to find. Much of his time was wasted traveling to and fro. Apparently, the earth string bane beasts were partly illusory and partly corporeal, making it possible for them to merge into the air itself. They were very difficult to track down, and sometimes even randomly disappeared in the middle of a fight. Were it not for Bai Xiaochun's exceptional senses, he might not even have been able to detect them. They would only materialize if you got very close to their hiding spot. Otherwise, they would remain hidden. I need to figure out a better method. The best way would be to get a bunch of earth string bane beast in the same area. My current method is too slow. Even attacking disciples from other sects wouldn't be fast enough. Even as he pondered the matter, he suddenly stopped in place. A whooshing sound could then be heard as a scaled hand reached out as if to grab him. When it grabbed nothing but air, it began to pull back, but before it could, Bai Xiaochun reached out and grabbed it. Then, he jerked his hand back, and a thunderous crash rang out like that of a giant mirror shattering. At the same time, a 3-meter-tall ape-like earth string bane beast was dragged out of thin air. It had no hair, only black scales, and as Bai Xiaochun dragged it out, it let out a powerful roar. Its eyes shone with ferocity, but very little intelligence. Almost immediately, it attempted to pounce on Bai Xiaochun, whose eyes flickered as he extended his left hand and grabbed the ape by the neck. Instead of crushing it, though, he pulled it a bit closer and began to examine it closely. Soon, his eyes began to shine with a strange light. If I could concoct a spirit medicine that could attract these bane beasts, that would definitely solve the problem. Then I could form that earth string capture crystal even faster. At the very least, it would be faster than trying to kill and rob other disciples. Having reached this point in his train of thought, Bai Xiaochun made his way off to the distance, eyes glittering, ape in tow. His destination was a valley up ahead, where he found a secluded place to hide and study the bane beast. His powerful gaze left the thing shivering, as though by merely looking at it he could see everything about its internal structure. Of course, the truth was he couldn't do that. At the moment, this bane beast was simply a subject for research, much the way some of the snakes had been to him years ago in 10,000 Snakes Valley. If he wanted to make a spirit medicine that would specifically target this kind of beast, then he obviously would need to study them on many levels. Eyes burning with passion, he reached into his bag of holding and pulled out a flying sword. Soon after, he was slicing open the bane beast's chest. The next day, his eyes were bloodshot as he left the valley. There isn't much difference between them and ordinary beasts. They have the same organs, and even have blood. However, as soon as they die, all of that vanishes and transforms into earth string energy. Another strange thing is that the earth string bane beasts don't have any food inside their stomachs. Is it that they don't need to eat food? With that, he captured another bane beast to perform further experiments. A few days later, more and more disciples were showing up in the area, which could be considered to be the middle section of the sword world. Some of them attacked other disciples to steal their Dao bottles, others went after the bane beasts. By this time, Bai Xiaochun had studied more than 10 different bane beasts, and his eyes were more bloodshot than ever. His hair was disheveled, and he almost looked as if he had gone mad. Poor eyesight and a bad sense of smell, and yet they seem very perceptive. How do they merge into the air? How are they formed from earth string energy? And why do they attack cultivators? Bai Xiaochun was now fully immersed in the Tao of medicine by this point. Continuing to mutter questions to himself, he confirmed that the bane beasts would always take the initiative to attack him, and did so with bloodthirsty ferocity. Wait a second. His heart began to pound as he realized that he might be onto something. Looking up suddenly, he hurried forward to find a bane beast to confirm his new theory. Before long, a 9-meter-long earth string bear appeared in front of him. It was covered with black scales, and was currently being besieged by 5 disciples in long, blood-red robes. Obviously, they were bloodstream sect disciples. Their killing intent was raging, and they didn't seem to care about anything except the kill. They didn't even care when one of their fellow disciples was suddenly killed. Bai Xiaochun's eyes glittered as he transformed into a beam of light that shot toward the area. Even as the 4 bloodstream sect disciples were preparing to launch another salvo, a blur appeared and someone reached out and grabbed the huge bear. The bloodstream sect disciples' eyes went wide. None of them immediately recognized Bai Xiaochun, but they could tell that he was wearing the clothing of the spirit stream sect. Soon, cold smiles appeared on their faces, as well as derision. During their fight with the bear, they had come to realize that it had certain special qualities, including a terrifying fleshly body power. He's gonna get himself killed. The spirit stream sect people are all so arrogant. That's a mid-level bane beast, not a low-level bane beast. Is he looking to die? The bloodstream sect disciples chuckled coldly as they imagined the bane beast ripping the spirit stream sect disciple to shreds. However, even as the cold smiles appeared on their faces, they suddenly trembled, and their eyes went wide with disbelief and shock. What they saw was Bai Xiaochun, his hair in complete disarray, grabbing onto the bear, which let out a terrifying roar. It then bared its teeth as if to rip Bai Xiaochun's arm off of his body and shred it to pieces. However, as soon Bai Xiaochun's hand latched down onto it, the bear acted as though a mountain of pressure had just crushed down onto it. Rumbling sounds echoed out as Bai Xiaochun pushed the bear down into the ground. The ground trembled, and the 4 bloodstream sect disciples all gasped, hardly able to believe their eyes. How is this possible? Such incredible strength. The 4 of them swallowed hard, and yet, weren't willing to simply leave. Even as they eyed Bai Xiaochun, he once again did something that left them trembling. Immersed as he was in his research, he completely ignored the bloodstream sect disciples. A flying sword appeared in his left hand, and in front of the eyes of all of the bloodstream sect disciples, he began to slice open the banebeast's arm. Blood sprayed everywhere, along with earth string energy. The Bane Beast howled, and Bai Xiaochun, apparently annoyed by the sound, slit its throat. The bloodstream sect disciples' eyes went wide, and they began to tremble and back up, eyes radiating reverence toward Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun didn't notice. After enough time passed for half an incense stick to burn, he managed to completely dissect the Bane Beast. Although the pieces were already starting to fade away, the mere sight of the sliced-up bear left the bloodstream sect disciples feeling as though their heads were about to explode. Did he have a grudge with that particular Bane Beast? Or does he always do that to them? Heavens, that's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen, even in the bloodstream sect. It must be some twisted hobby of his. One of the disciples pulled out a jade slip, checked it, and then said, that's Bai Xiaochun. The other 3 disciples gasped at the mention of the name. Without even the slightest hesitation, they began to back up, doing everything possible to get as far away as they could. Sometime later, Bai Xiaochun's eyes were shining with excitement. Taking a deep breath, he rose to his feet and began to pace back and forth, occasionally gesticulating with one hand or the other. I get it now. The Bane Beasts look like ordinary beasts, but there's something different about them. Spiritual energy is as useful to them as earth string energy is to cultivators trying to reach foundation establishment. That's why any disciples who get eaten by them instantly disappear into nothing. They get totally absorbed. Ha ha ha, I can definitely concoct the pill I need. He threw his head back and laughed uproariously, then looked around, somewhat surprised to find that everyone had left. Shaking his head, he blurred into motion, heading off into the distance to find a cave. Once he found a suitable location, he produced some earth flame crystals and began to concoct. He had the pill formula in mind, which he followed based on his understanding of the Bane Beasts. In addition to the medicinal plants, he added in some of his own blood. Worried that that might not be enough, he called upon the principles of mutual augmentation and suppression to adjust things perfectly. He spent 4 hours concocting, after which the pill furnace began to rumble. When the sound died down, a medicinal pill appeared. Bai Xiaochun grabbed it and set off to look for Bane Beasts. After finding one, he threw out the medicinal pill, but was disappointed to find that it didn't have any effect whatsoever. This can't be right. What went wrong? The next few days, he spent more time researching the Bane Beasts. By that time, it had been 20 days since the opening of the Fallen Sword Abyss. Most of the disciples of the four sects had reached the depths of the world, and were in different areas fighting and killing bane beasts. The Bloodstream sect was truly strong, and incredibly vicious. The Profound Stream sect and the Spirit Stream sect were about evenly matched, with the Pill Stream sect being the weakest of them all. There were even fights that broke out between some of the top chosen from the various sects. The most noteworthy fight was when Ghost Fong fought 9 Isles from the Profound Stream sect. It lasted an entire day, and shook everything in the area. In the end, 9 Isles was seriously injured and fled. Having come out victorious, Ghost Fong came to be known as the one person who was qualified to fight Song Ke. Gongsun Wan'er and Zhao Ru fought a few times, and although there were always clear winners and losers, neither managed to kill the other. Shangguan Tianyu put on quite a show. In the middle of killing a bane beast, he saw Fang Lin, the number 1 chosen from the Pill Stream sect, and the two of them fought a fierce battle. In the end, it was hard to say who came out on top. Song Ke from the Bloodstream sect was like a shadowy specter. He never attacked anyone, and few people even saw him. As for the other person listed in the information about the Bloodstream sect, Xu Zhaoshan, he also began to make a name for himself. People bristled with anger at the sheer amount of magical items he had at his disposal. When he unleashed them in battle, any opponent he fought was left shocked. One disciple who quickly came to be known as a dark horse in the competition was Bai Xiaochun from the Spirit Stream sect. Not much information about him had been made available to the other 3 sects, and therefore, people took him to be an ordinary chosen. Who could ever have imagined that when he encountered Lei Shan from the Profound Stream sect, a massive battle would ensue? In the end, Bai Xiaochun seemed to be on the same level as Lei Shan, which was shocking considering that other than 9 Isles, he was considered to be the top chosen of his generation in the Profound Stream sect. Very few people could hold their own in a fight against him. Before, he was simply a chosen from the Spirit Stream sect. For him to be able to do such a thing left many people shocked. In addition to the friction and fighting between the famous chosen, there were many fierce battles between the other disciples. People died on a daily basis, and some unlucky people were eaten by the bane beasts. As for the disciples who survived all of the fighting, their collections of earth string energy grew. Soon, it was getting harder and harder to find the bane beasts, which meant that the fighting between disciples started to grow fiercer. People ganged up on others. People set traps. Some people simply overwhelmed others with direct force. All sorts of tactics were unleashed, until the fallen sword abyss began to devolve into chaos. Eyes were bloodshot as people fought back and forth in the struggles for earth string energy. Nobody wanted to be the last person to collect the energy they needed, and everyone wanted to be first. Bai Xiaochun was aware of the murderous atmosphere around him. However, he didn't go out much. He spent most of his time doing research or concocting medicine. Even still, he ran into the corpses of 17 Spirit Stream sect disciples. Whenever he did, he would carefully store the corpses in his bag of holding to take them back to the sect. When he went out looking for bane beasts, he went about his work as quickly as possible. He would strike like lightning, grab the bane beast, and then take it away to study. Afterward, he would go back to concocting. Before he even realized it, his Dao bottle of gray liquid was about a third full. However, he didn't pay much attention to that. He focused mostly on concocting. By this point, he had failed dozens of times. On a few occasions, he failed 5 or 6 times in one day. However, he didn't give up. As he grew more familiar with the anatomy of the bane beasts, he slowly slipped into a frenzy. At one point, he even personally went to observe how a bane beast would go about killing a cultivator. At that point, he realized that the attacks weren't physical, but rather, an absorption of life force. Suddenly, all of his experiences and research up to that point coalesced into an epiphany. He quickly selected a remote mountain cave and set about concocting, his eyes completely bloodshot. This session lasted for 5 days, during which time he didn't set a single foot outside. He failed dozens of times. However, on evening of the 5th day, as the sky grew dark and fighting filled the lands around him, intense rumbling sounds began to emanate from his pill furnace, spreading out to fill half of the entire fallen sword world. Boom. It was like heaven-rending, earth-crushing thunder that spread out in all directions. Shockingly, black clouds appeared above the cave, which pulsed with strands of white energy. All of the disciples of the 4 sects who were in that part of the fallen sword world looked in the direction where Bai Xiaochun was concocting medicine. Everyone was completely shocked. Ghostfeng had been in the middle of speeding along on a task when he suddenly heard the rumbling sound, and his eyes glittered. In another location, Song Ke was in front of a nondescript stone wall, studying it carefully. When he heard the sound, his eyes widened. What's that sound? Xu Zhaoshan from the Bloodstream Sect felt his heart began to pound. Is a precious treasure appearing in the world? Eyes widening, he picked up speed, heading in the direction of the sound. Lei Shan from the Profound Stream Sect was relatively close to the source of the sounds, and was just as intrigued as Xu Zhaoshan. Eyes shining with excitement and curiosity, he sped off toward the sound. The bizarre thunderous rumbling didn't just attract the attention of the cultivators. It also attracted Bane beasts. And also, in some mysterious location within the fallen sword world, it caught the attention of Bane souls. In the half of the fallen sword world that was affected, countless areas began to distort and twist. It seemed as though countless slumbering Bane beasts within the air itself were suddenly being awoken by the crashing of thunder. Somehow, they could sense Bai Xiaochun's spirit medicine, and trembled, slowly opening their eyes. Although there were disciples from the 4 sects in some of the areas where the Bane beasts began to wake up, most of the areas were devoid of cultivators. As soon as the Bane beasts opened their vicious eyes, they looked in Bai Xiaochun's direction, radiating greed and madness. Moments later, countless howls ripped through the air. Ripples spread out through the fallen sword world like waves on water, stirring the Bane beasts, which began to rush at top speed through the air. However, what was more shocking than the Bane beasts was what happened in certain locations where the Bane beasts didn't dare to enter. There, numerous shadowy figures began to appear out of thin air. There were men and women, old and young. The youngest of them all was a little girl in a white dress. Clutched in her arms was a skinless, blood-colored bear. They floated there with blank looks in their eyes, accompanied by various strange beasts that were not native to the lands of Heavenspan. They were Bane souls. All of the living things which had been killed by this enormous sword during its existence beyond the heavens were affected by earth strings and transformed into these lifeless souls. They were bizarre and enigmatic to the extreme, and apparently, were not people of the lands of Heavenspan. They had come from the legendary region beyond the heavens, the location of that which was eternal. Now they were scattered about through the various remote regions of the fallen sword world, in places where the Bane beasts didn't dare to even approach. As of this moment, numerous such figures were stepping out of thin air to appear in the open. Some of them wore ancient robes, some wore battle armor, and some had skin made of scales instead of flesh. They looked strange, most of them badly mutilated, as if from combat wounds. Some had missing arms, some were partially decapitated, some had gaping wounds in their torsos. As they appeared, black mist pulsed out from them in all directions. All of the Bane souls had blank expressions. They had no consciousness, nor any memories. Anywhere they passed, the Bane beasts would be left trembling, and would simply cower as they went by. Any Bane beast which was unlucky enough to actually be touched by one of the Bane souls would instantly be destroyed and vanish into nothing. The Bane souls that had the shape of beasts were particularly bizarre, as if they had been pieced together from parts of different creatures. The Bane souls began to float through the air, picking up speed until they were moving unbelievably quickly. Nothing could block their path as they headed straight toward Bai Xiaochun. Vast numbers of them were converging upon him from all directions. As they passed along, some of the disciples from the 4 sects realized that something strange was happening. They saw the air rippling as countless Bane beasts appeared, and at first, many of the ecstatic disciples rushed forward to try to kill them. But soon, their scalps began to tingle as they realized that there were far too many, hordes of them, like a tide of Bane beasts. What's going on? Heavens! The Bane beasts are usually so hard to find. Why are there so many of them all of a sudden? Something must have happened. Damn it, that's not a Bane beast, that's a Banasoul. Cries of astonishment began to ring out all over the fallen sword world. As soon as the disciples realized that there were Bane souls flying among the Bane beasts, they began to flee. The Bane souls were terrifying, and the elders of the 4 great sects had repeatedly warned all of their disciples about their existence within the fallen sword abyss. Under no circumstances were the Bane souls to be provoked. They were to be avoided at all costs. Even the Bane souls are attracted to whatever is in that direction. Just what exactly is happening over there? Let's follow from a distance and check it out. The The disciples began to follow the tide of Bane beasts and Bane souls, either alone or in groups of between 3 to 5. By this point, half of the entire fallen sword world was being utterly shaken by the 9 volleys of thunder created by Bai Xiaochun's spirit medicine. Within the mountain cave, Bai Xiaochun sat there looking a bit gaunt, his hair disheveled as he stared at the pill furnace. With every rumbling boom, more cracks would spread out across the surface of the furnace. After the 9th boom, the pill furnace suddenly trembled violently and then exploded, sending fragments shooting out in all directions. At the same time, 4 beams of mysterious black light emerged. Bai Xiaochun had been prepared for just such a thing to occur. He instantly unleashed the violet chi cauldron control art, creating an invisible field of control in the area that enabled him to quickly secure the 4 spirit medicines which had been trying to escape. "Think you can get away?" he said with a proud harumph. Looking down at the 4 medicinal pills with shining eyes, he hurried toward the mouth of cave to see if they would work on the Bane beasts. However, the instant he emerged, his expression flickered, and he took a step back, just avoiding a black scorpion tail which slashed through the air in the spot where he had just been standing. A moment later, a 3-meter-long black scorpion materialized out of thin air, its eyes burning with madness and greed as it stared at the 4 medicinal pills in Bai Xiaochun's hand. Then, it lunged forward. Considering the ferocity of its movements, it didn't appear to be a low-level Bane beast. It was a mid-level beast, much like the bear from earlier. Eyes glittering, Bai Xiaochun reached out with this left hand, moving like lightning as he grabbed the scorpion's tail. Then he smashed it against the stone wall of the cave. At the same time, he sent some spiritual power into the scorpion's body, to its weakest spot, which he crushed. The scorpion twitched, and then went limp and began to fade away, transforming into earth string energy that Bai Xiaochun quickly collected up. An ordinary cultivator would never be able to deal with a mid-level Bane beast so easily, which was why the senior members of the sect had warned the disciples about them. Bai Xiaochun was different, though. After studying nearly 100 Bane beasts, he was very familiar with their weaknesses, and could kill them easily. The pills just came out of the furnace and they're already attracting the attention of Bane beasts. Ha ha ha, Bai Xiaochun's medicinal pills are a success. Bai Xiaochun was excitedly contemplating whether or not to perform a spirit enhancement on the pills, when suddenly, numerous ripples began to spread out in the area as one Bane beast after another appeared. So many. Alright, that's more than enough. Ha ha ha, at this rate, Bai Xiaochun is definitely going to be the first to reach Foundation establishment. Bai Xiaochun was so excited he almost started dancing in place. Just as he was about to reap his bountiful harvest, his expression flickered, and his eyes went wide as he noticed a partially decapitated figure off in the distance. He wore a long gray robe, and the one eye that remained on his face had a blank expression. He floated along through the air, his head twitching a bit. Eventually, he laid eyes on Bai Xiaochun, and suddenly, his expression changed. He suddenly seemed to be filled with longing. Eyes locked onto Bai Xiaochun, or more specifically, the medicinal pills in his hand, he began to speed forward. The Bane beasts in the area all trembled at the sight of him, and didn't dare to even move. As the figure sped along, he hit 7 or 8 Bane beasts in the process, causing them to shriek and then explode. A Banasol? The pills even attract them? Well, at least it's only one of, huh? Before he could finish speaking, another Banasol appeared further off in the distance. This one was missing its arms, and had wildly disheveled hair. It wore a set of dilapidated armor, and was also staring longingly at Bai Xiaochun as it sped toward him. Things weren't over yet. An old man appeared off in the distance, with a huge, gaping wound in his abdomen. He too began to head directly toward Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun's scalp began to tingle with fear. Taking a deep breath, he took a step as if to flee, only to find to his shock that there weren't just 3 or 4 or 5 Bane souls in the area, there was an entire horde. Ripples filled the area as numerous Bane souls appeared in quick succession, their eyes gleaming with longing. Bai Xiaochun's face drained of blood as he contemplated what it would feel like to be ripped to pieces. How could this be happening? He wanted to cry, but no tears would come at the moment. His first thought was to flee. He had no desire to face so many Bane souls. Even members of the senior generation of the 4 sects would likely perish at the hands of these Bane souls, much less the Qi condensation disciples. However, in the moment that Bai Xiaochun made to flee, the Bane souls all looked at him and screamed. The power within their voices caused the Bane beasts to tremble even harder. A tremor ran through Bai Xiaochun, and he teetered on the verge of unconsciousness as he staggered backward. It felt like he had just been hit with a hammer, blood sprayed out of his mouth, and he began to tremble in fear. Screaming, he bit his tongue, using the pain to stay awake as he took to flight. Cold sweat broke out all over him as wings appeared behind the black walk on his back. With that, he unleashed all the speed he could muster, transforming into a series of afterimages that shot off into the distance. However, the flying Bane souls also increased their speed. In the blink of an eye, the dozens of nearby Bane souls all took to flight in pursuit of Bai Xiaochun. One of the fastest Bane souls was the partially decapitated one that had appeared first. However, in addition to that one, there was a girl in a white dress. Although she didn't scream like the others, her face was especially cold and sinister, and her blank eyes glimmered with intense longing. When the disciples of the 4 sects who had been following along saw what was happening, their scalps tingled with shock. That was especially true of the Spirit Stream sect disciples. Some of them anxiously tried to get the Bane souls to stop chasing Bai Xiaochun, but the Bane souls were completely and utterly focused, and ignored everything else but him. "Help, they're trying to kill me." Bai Xiaochun fled for his life, screaming at the top of his lungs. Tears leaked out of the corners of his eyes. Never could he have imagined that the medicinal pills he had concocted to attract Bane beasts would, for some unknown reason, drag Bane souls into the picture. Damn it, I must have made a mistake in my concocting and produced another mystery pill. The Bane souls were getting closer and closer, and seemed to be devolving further into madness as they chased him. Bai Xiaochun finally gritted his teeth and, heart aching, tossed one of the 4 medicinal pills far off into the distance. In that instant, the Bane souls shivered, and their heads swiveled. Then, most of them shot off after the medicinal pill he'd just thrown. Bai Xiaochun was finally able to truly flee. Some distance away, he looked over his shoulder, shivering. Behind him, the Bane souls were fighting over the medicinal pill. Shockingly, the one who ended up getting the pill in the end was the girl in the white dress, who tossed the pill into her mouth as soon as she wrested control of it. In that instant, the blankness in the girl's eyes faded a bit. A strange glow appeared, and her expression turned even more icy. For some reason, she suddenly seemed to possess intelligence. Slowly, the girl turned to look at Bai Xiaochun. When their eyes met, Bai Xiaochun's scalp started tingling so hard it felt like it was going to explode. At the same moment, a faint, bizarre voice was transmitted into his ear. "Come play with me, sweetie." All the hair on Bai Xiaochun's body stood on end. Turning around, he fled as fast as he could. "That's not a Banisoul, that's an evil ghost." Heart-pounding with fear, Bai Xiaochun fled at top speed. Moments ago, when his gaze met the young girl's, he had instantly been filled with a sensation of deadly crisis. The feeling had been so intense that it felt like every inch of his flesh and every drop of his blood was screaming in terror. He was filled with the premonition that if he ran any slower, he would die. That deathly feeling left him shaking visibly, panting, his eyes bloodshot as he pushed forward faster and faster, flying ever deeper into the depths of the fallen sword world. The next day, he looked over his shoulder to confirm that he wasn't being chased by any Bane souls, especially the little girl. When he saw that he was alone, he let out a long sigh of relief. However, fear still lingered in his heart regarding the events of the previous day. Something was really fishy about that girl in the white dress, he thought, scowling miserably. At first she looked like all the other Bane souls, but after she ate that mystery pill, her aura completely changed. Just where exactly did I go wrong with that batch of pills? He thought about giving up on the idea, but the truth was that his medicinal pill had attracted the Bane beasts. In the end, he couldn't just give up that easily. Gritting his teeth, he went out to find more Bane beasts to research. At the same time, he studied the medicine formula he had used. 3 days later, after making some adjustments, he steeled himself and once again pulled out a pill furnace to start concocting. This time, there wasn't any thunder, nor any other strange signs. 4 violet medicinal pills appeared, which he carefully took outside to test, preparing ahead of time for what to do if Bane souls showed up. Soon, ripples filled the area as one Bane beast after another appeared. However, Bai Xiaochun didn't dare to make a move on them. He flew away at top speed, and then studied the area carefully. Before long, the medicinal pill had attracted over 20 Bane beasts, and not a single Banisoul had appeared. Finally, Bai Xiaochun breathed a sigh of relief, and even started to get excited. "It worked," he exclaimed, laughing loudly. As he removed the paper talismans he had stuck all over himself, the glow of the shields faded, and he hurried over to the Bane beasts. Soon, his wooden sword transformed into flashing beams of light as the fighting began. One Bane beast after another fell in death, and Bai Xiaochun's eyes shone with wild delight as the streams of earth string energy flew into his Dao bottle. After slaughtering the entire group, he looked in satisfaction at the gray liquid inside the bottle. In a very short moment, he had added more liquid into the bottle than he had in the past several days. Taking a deep breath, he headed to another area. There, he threw out another medicinal pill and sure enough, Bane beasts began to flock to the area. Laughing heartily, Bai Xiaochun immediately began to cut them down. Time passed. Because of the medicinal pills, the gray liquid in Bai Xiaochun's Dao bottle continued to build up at a shocking rate. Now he was collecting earth string energy far more quickly than anyone else. A few days later, it had been a full month since Bai Xiaochun entered the Fallen Sword world. As for his Dao bottle, it was now 80% full of earth string energy. Only 20% to go, he thought, more excited than ever. He wasn't sure how others were faring in their collection efforts, but he doubted many of them had surpassed him. However, being the perfectionist that he was, he decided that the best thing would be to fill 10% in a single shot. I need more Bane beasts. Licking his lips, he headed further down into the Fallen Sword world until he found a wide open plain. There, he took a deep breath and then pulled out 2 medicinal pills. Hoping to attract even more Bane beasts than before, he crushed the pills and then scattered them around. It didn't take long before the air rippled as numerous Bane beasts appeared. Bai Xiaochun immediately began to attack them, causing rumbling booms to fill the area. Every Bane beast he slew caused earth string energy to stream into his Dao bottle. Because of how he had crushed the pills, and also because of the favorable position he had chosen, which was close to the deepest parts of the Fallen Sword world, there were plenty of slumbering Bane beasts in the area. Soon, it wasn't a group of dozens that was converging on the area, it was closer to 100. Almost all of them were mid-level, with a few here and there that were high-level, the type that would normally require an entire group of chosen to take down. Bai Xiaochun's speed in killing the Bane beasts couldn't match the speed with which new ones appeared on the scene. Soon, there were 200 gathered in the area, and their numbers only continued to grow. Any cultivator who managed to catch sight of such a huge number of Bane beasts would go wild with joy. In fact, some of the disciples of the 4 sects did notice what was happening, and gathered on the periphery to snag whatever beasts they could. One of them was a young man who attacked with utter ruthlessness, and immediately caused quite a stir among the nearby Pill Stream sect disciples. Eventually, Bai Xiaochun noticed him, and recognized him as the number 1 chosen from the Pill Stream sect, Fang Lin. Bai Xiaochun wasn't too happy that he had drawn all these Bane beasts here only to have other people slaughter and take them. However, considering that he couldn't even keep up with the growing numbers, he simply gave a cold harumph and then ignored them. Gradually, a group of over 40 cultivators had gathered in the area. It was only at that point that they managed to get on equal footing with the Bane beasts. Elated, they began to join forces to make things go even faster. That was especially true of some of the Spirit Stream sect disciples. When they got close to Bai Xiaochun, he made sure to take care of them, ensuring that their harvest was even greater than before. Bai Xiaochun excitedly watched the earth string liquid building up in his Dao bottle. Soon, it was 90% full. However, it was at that exact moment that more than 10 beams of light suddenly appeared up in the air. They wore matching robes, those of the Profound Stream sect, and leading them was a burly man surrounded by swirling electricity. The surrounding disciples' faces flickered, except for Fang Lin's. He simply continued to slaughter the Bane beasts, not even bothering to look over. Lei Shan, the number 2 chosen of the Profound Stream sect. Damn it, if he came by himself it might not be a big deal, but look at how many people he has with him. Even as everyone looked on with mixed expressions, Lei Shan glanced out over all the Bane beasts, and his eyes lit up with joy. He'd heard from some fellow Profound Stream sect disciples that a strange tide of Bane beasts had appeared, which was why he had hurried over in this direction. Only 40% of my bottle is empty. When it's full, I can form the earth string capture crystal. I can probably do that by killing all of these Bane beasts here. Lei Shan threw his head back and laughed uproariously. When the Profound Stream sect disciples at his side realized what he intended to do, one of them, a long-faced young man, chuckled darkly and stepped forward. Listen up, he bellowed to the disciples in the area. If you're not from the Profound Stream Sect, beat it immediately. This place is our territory now. The disciples from the other 3 sects bristled with rage, while the Profound Stream Sect disciples began to laugh as they joined Lei Shan's group. By that point, they were roughly 30 strong. Under Lei Shan's leadership, the group of 30 prepared to drive everyone away, and fight with deadly force against any who resisted. Chaos quickly ensued. You have 10 breaths of time to get the hell out of here, and leave your Dao bottles behind. If you don't want to go, then be prepared to lose your life. As the Profound Stream Sect disciples glared around them, the Bloodstream Sect disciples exchanged glances and then began to fall back. Most of the Bloodstream Sect were on their own, like lone wolves, and didn't want to provoke Lei Shan. The Pillstream Sect disciples were at a bit of a loss, and had no other choice than to fall back. Lei Shan hesitated for a moment when he realized that Fang Lin was in the crowd. He still suspected that the terrifying magical massacre which had been carried out a month before had been enacted by Fang Lin, and thus, didn't wish to provoke him. Because of the terrifying nature of the battlefield he had come across, he decided to simply let the Pillstream Sect disciples leave. As for Fang Lin, he resolved not to do anything to offend him personally. As the Bloodstream Sect and Pillstream Sect disciples fled, the Spirit Stream Sect disciples turned to see what Bai Xiaochun would do. Bai Xiaochun was incensed, but the group led by Lei Shan was simply too large. He only had about 10 people on his side, and if they got into a fight, he knew that while he might be able to make it out unscathed, they would have a harder time. There would likely be many serious injuries and even deaths. All right, let's go, he said. It's just a flood of beasts, after all. Your sect uncle will go start another one for you. Gritting his teeth, he was just about to leave when Lei Shan looked over and suddenly laughed. The Bloodstream Sect disciples were ferocious, and he didn't have any wish to tangle with them. As for Fang Lin from the Pillstream Sect, he also preferred to steer clear of him. But when it came to the Spirit Stream Sect, once he realized it was Bai Xiaochun he was dealing with, as well as a few ordinary disciples, he recalled the information from his sect about Bai Xiaochun, and his expression became one of derision. You people from the Spirit Stream Sect can leave, he said, his eyes flickering with killing intent, but your Dao bottles stay behind. Comply, or don't even think about leaving. The Spirit Stream Sect disciples' faces fell, and Bai Xiaochun's anger grew. You want to steal my animals and then rob my Dao bottle? You people are nothing but bullies. With a cold snort, Lei Shan began to fly toward the Spirit Stream Sect disciples, joined by the rest of the Profound Stream Sect, who were cackling viciously. If you're being bullied, you should blame the fact that you don't have any powerful experts on your side. Sect Uncle Bai. Sect Uncle Bai, what do we do now? The Spirit Stream Sect disciples were trembling in anxiety, and Bai Xiaochun's eyes were completely bloodshot. Suddenly, he lifted his right hand, within which could be seen a black medicinal pill, the very same pill which could attract Bane souls. Expression somber, eyes bloodshot, he turned to the Spirit Stream Sect disciples and said, just wait until I throw out this medicinal pill, and then you guys. However, before he could finish speaking, the surrounding Spirit Stream Sect disciples gasped, the terror on their faces vastly exceeding their terror at seeing the Profound Stream Sect closing in. They immediately began to flee at top speed. Is that the legendary aphrodisiac pill? Heavens, no wonder he can control the Bane beasts. Sect Uncle Bai is a god. The only thing that determines whether that pill works on the Bane beasts is whether Sect Uncle Bai wants it to or not. Let's get out of here. If we're too slow, we're dead. The Spirit Stream Sect fled in abject terror. The Profound Stream Sect wanted to block their path, but no threat could cause them to tremble like Bai Xiaochun's medicinal pills could. Bai Xiaochun's jaw dropped at the sight of his fellow disciples fleeing in such a fashion. Worried that he had pulled out the wrong pill, he looked down to confirm which pill he was holding. Clearing his throat, he then gave a mighty shout as he launched the pill into the air. It shot up and then exploded, becoming swirling black mist that spread out in all directions. Lei Shan frowned, and the Profound Stream Sect disciples scattered, worried that the mist might be toxic. As for the Bane beasts in the area, as soon as they caught a whiff of the destroyed medicinal pill, their eyes lit up with madness, and they began to howl. At the same time, Lei Shan's eyes flickered as if with lightning as he watched Bai Xiaochun attempting to flee at high speed. Snorting coldly, he said, think you can leave just like that? Leave your Dao bottle behind. With that, he flicked his sleeve, causing thunder to boom, shoving the black mist away from him. Then he shot after Bai Xiaochun, moving with incredible speed. Lightning danced around him, and flames burned beneath his feet. As he closed in, he waved his right finger through the air. Rumbling could be heard as a sea of flames appeared, which then rose up into a huge wall that blocked Bai Xiaochun's path. Within the wall of flames, bolts of lightning appeared which then shot toward Bai Xiaochun. When the profound stream sect disciples saw this, their eyes glittered with derision. As far as they were concerned, Bai Xiaochun was dreaming if he thought he could escape from Lei Shan. A rogue Foundation establishment cultivator once chased elder brother Lei Shan for 7 days but never caught him. Even eldest brother Nine Isles praised his speed before. And then there's his flame lightning magic. Elder brother Lei Shan has already reached the pinnacle. Nobody in this generation could possibly match up to him. Bai Xiaochun is courting death. Even as the profound stream sect mocked him, Bai Xiaochun's anxiety increased. He knew that the Bane souls could show up at any moment, and that the best thing to do was leave this place as quickly as possible. Seeing that his path was blocked, his eyes flickered, and he slammed into the incoming bolts of lightning. Boom! As soon as the lightning bolts made contact with him, they shattered into countless sparks of electricity that scattered in all directions. Bai Xiaochun, on the other hand, didn't seem to have even a mark on him. He continued on to the wall of flames, and when he hit that, it exploded too, and he passed right through. Impossible, Lei Shan said, his eyes widening with disbelief and shock. He was very familiar with his own magical techniques, and was confident that other than Nine Isles, Ghost Fang, Song Ke and Fang Lin, there were no Qi condensation disciples who could pass through his flame lightning unharmed. And yet, unexpectedly, Bai Xiaochun had done exactly that. This guy is, before he could finish speaking, an indescribable sensation of deadly crisis washed over him. Looking over his shoulder, he saw the air rippling off in the distance as numerous Bane souls appeared, rushing in his direction with expressions of longing. Bana souls, he gasped. Just as he was preparing to flee, his heart was struck with deathly terror. There are so many. Heavens! There weren't just 3 or 4 Bane souls approaching. The air rippled with constant fluctuations as dozens of them closed in, with even more behind them. From the look of it, there might be 100 in total. Among the Bane souls was a sinister young girl in a white dress, holding a bear. Her eyes swirled with underworldly light, and although her face was expressionless, Lei Shan and the dozens of profound stream sect disciples with him could hear chuckling in their ears. It was a bizarre, sinister laughter that instantly set their hearts pounding. Further off among the crowd of Bane beasts, Fang Lin's eyes went wide, and he began to flee, panting. Bai Xiaochun was further off, running for his life. He could also hear the chuckling, and it left his scalp numb with fear. Wings appeared behind the black walk on his back, and he blasted off at top speed. HMPH, you think you can just steal my Bane beasts? Those are Lord Bai's Bane beasts. Nobody can just take them away. With a cold snort, he pushed forward even faster. Lei Shan swallowed hard, and his face was totally ashen. Having no time to pay any heed to his fellow disciples and the horde of beasts, he fled. About this time, the girl in the white dress shot out ahead of the horde of Bane souls to be the first to arrive in the area where the medicinal pill had exploded. There, she took a deep breath, causing the surrounding black mist to be sucked in through her eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. At the same time, the surrounding Bane beasts began to tremble and then explode, transforming into ash. As for the few dozen profound stream sect disciples, their bodies were completely beyond their own control. White mist began to seep out of their own eyes, ears, noses, and mouths, and was sucked away with the black mist by the girl. "Come back and play with me, sweetie," she said. No longer was her face expressionless. Her lips twitched into something like a smile, a terrifying smile that would cause any cultivator who saw it to tremble. Her voice reverberated through the air, matchlessly sinister, echoing out in all directions. The disciples of the profound stream sect felt as if their souls were being ripped out of their bodies. Their flesh and blood withered, and they became like stiff corpses which hopped over to the girl's side, where they began to lurch and dance as if they were playing with her. Their withered bodies and stiff limbs provided a bizarre scene, and from a distance, Lei Shan and Fang Lin looked on with ashen faces. Hearts trembling, they began to flee in terror. What kind of Bana soul is that? The sect's information didn't list anything about Bane souls like that. It can even talk. That's impossible. Lei Shan and Fang Lin were both shaking as they fled in different directions, resorting to life-saving magics to flee as fast as possible. The other Bane souls around the little girl weren't able to absorb any of the black mist, and soon they calmed down, and began to float aimlessly with blank expressions on their faces. The little girl stood there in their midst, looking completely bizarre. By now, her eyes were pitch black. Momentarily ignoring the fleeing Lei Shan and Fang Lin, she slowly turned in the direction Bai Xiaochun had fled in. Then her lips twitched into something that almost looked like a smile, and she flew after Lei Shan. Deep in the fallen sword world, Bai Xiaochun flew along at top speed for 2 days before finally slowing down. That little girl in the white dress left him shivering in fear. However, as soon as he thought about how he had filled his Dao bottle by more than 90%, he realized that he only needed a bit more earth string energy to form the earth string capture crystal. Therefore, he began to carefully use his medicinal pills to attract more Bane beasts to collect the last bit of earth string energy he needed. 2 days later, he had gathered a few dozen Bane beasts in a remote location. After slaughtering the entire group, his Dao bottle was completely filled with earth string energy. The gray liquid began to bubble and boil, and then solidify. Soon, cracking sounds could be heard, and the bottle shattered. A gray crystal was revealed, which Bai Xiaochun grabbed. Almost instantly, he felt a connection between himself and the world around him, a resonance that he hadn't felt before. This crystal was like a key that unlocked the barrier between himself and the world. It worked, he exclaimed. He now felt more confident than ever that if he absorbed enough energy, he would be able to reach Foundation establishment. However, he knew that he shouldn't go about it carelessly, he needed to find a safe place to go through the process. After all, if someone interfered with the process, causing it to fail, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Foundation establishment. Foundation establishment. Ha ha ha. Suppressing his excitement, he was about to begin his search for a safe location when suddenly, he felt a chill run down his back and up his neck. Without even thinking about it, he looked over his shoulder, and saw a face directly behind him. It was a little girl's face, her lips twisted into a bizarre smile. Everything around him was deathly quiet. Bai Xiaochun's eyes widened, and his hair began to stand on end. The flame of his life force flickered a bit, as his intuition told him that this girl was extremely dangerous. "Come play with me, sweetie," she said in a sinister voice. In that same instant, a cold wind blew past, and Bai Xiaochun suddenly realized that the girl wasn't holding the skinless, blood-colored bear anymore. She was holding something else, and when Bai Xiaochun realized what it was, his heart began to pound. It was a tiny cultivator, skinned like the bear had been. Although it wasn't easy to tell at first, it was none other than Lei Shan. The majestic number 2 chosen from the profound stream sect was being held in the arms of this little girl. Clearly, he wasn't dead either. He was trembling from the pain, and his tongue had been removed, making it impossible for him to speak. Bai Xiaochun's mouth and throat went dry, and he began to back away, shaking physically. All of a sudden, he realized that he had no idea how long the girl had been following him. Your sweetie has something else to do right now," he said, feeling like he was about to cry. "Why don't you go find somebody else to play with? There's a guy named Song K, and another called 9 Isles. Oh right, there's also Fang Lin. Why you can go play with them, alright?" However, the girl continued to advance on him, chuckling. As she neared, she suddenly began to breathe in deeply. Instantly, Bai Xiaochun's mind began to spin, and he felt his life force stirring, as though it were about to be ripped out of him. At that moment, any other person really would have lost their life force. But Bai Xiaochun's fleshly body was powerful. The silver light of the undying live forever technique flickered in resistance. Bai Xiaochun let out a piercing shriek as the sensation of imminent death washed over him. Without any hesitation, he pulled out his third mystery pill and threw it off into the distance. In that instant, the girl's eyes flickered with mysterious light. Happily ignoring Bai Xiaochun, she went off after the medicinal pill. Face ashen, Bai Xiaochun took advantage of the moment to flee as fast as he could. The girl didn't chase him. After retrieving the medicinal pill, she put it in her mouth, and her eyes grew even blacker than before. A bizarre smile appeared on her face as she turned her head to look in the direction Bai Xiaochun had fled. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.